Hello, everybody, and welcome. I see Tracy's already in the chat, so hi, Tracy. Hello, my name is Julie Fei-Fan Balzer, and you can find me everywhere on Facebook, on Instagram, on everything as Balzer Designs. In case you've stumbled upon this and you don't know what it is, we are discussing the book The Artist's Way. Now, The Artist's Way is a 12-week self-help program, and I don't know how to put this eloquently, it's super famous. Lots of people talk about it as like changing their lives and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of ubiquitous. It's definitely in the cultural zeitgeist. And so I thought we could attack it together. I kind of hate it. I kind of like it. I kind of hate it. That's a good sum up of what we've done so far. So each week we get together and we talk about our own experiences of the book, of what's in it this week. If you've read the book, great. If you haven't, that's also fine too. And then each week, I also put together a little vlog, basically, that shares my experience with that week. So I also want to say on a personal accomplishment level, this is the first week that I am not coughing and hacking and have a cough drop in my mouth. So hooray for that. That's a party all in its own. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to pop up the vlog to sort of talk about my week 3 experience. Feel free to chat in the comments. And then after the video, we'll just talk about what we saw, what we did. I'm working on a big blog post and I actually had like a brain thing come together. So I'm excited to talk about that too. Okay, so video.
Recovering a sense of power. So I'm working on my morning pages and I've had a wonderful realization. So let me just backtrack for a second. I finally figured that the way to tackle the morning pages was to really understand why we're supposed to do them. Because I feel like one of the things I truly believe, it's the way that I teach art classes, it's the way I approach everything, is that if you understand the why, the sort of underpinnings, if you can check under the hood to see the engine, like you are much better at making things work for you, at creating, sort of in your own way and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really interested in understanding like why and how morning pages work. So towards that end, while I've been doing my morning pages, I've been doing something that you're probably not supposed to do, but it works for me. And that's the important key here, which is I've been referring back to the book and sort of like reading deeply each paragraph, then sort of writing my own stream of consciousness about what I think that paragraph means, and then coming back, reading the next paragraph and sort of writing what I think it means, etc. And in that, I discovered something really important, which is a lot of what the morning pages are for is to get you into this, what she calls artist brain. And for better or for worse, I live in artist brain. I do. And so this artist brain is kind of like, look at a spider web, see the magic of it, not the idea that you have to clean it. That's me. Artist brain is like connecting weird things together and coming up with odd ways to say things and being playful about everyday stuff. Literally, that's me, like all the time. Steve is like, you're riling up our son because I'm playing and I am that weirdo. I just have artist brain all the time. So maybe I need a book that can help me get logic brain and not so much artist brain. I certainly do not need to get into a theological debate with the internet at any point. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't understand why creativity has to be so closely linked to God or the idea of a higher power. And she seems to spend a lot of time right now arguing for why you should believe. So there's a lot of this chapter that is focused on saying that, like, if you don't believe that there's a higher power there, you must be scared because believing in a higher power is scary. And the idea is that, like, all the little coincidences that happen to you in your life are really because God or whatever variation of that you're believing in is out there, like, catching you or helping you or making things line up. And That's a nice thought. But I always wonder, because she doesn't have anything in here when all the bad negative coincidences happen, when you just have a series of unfortunate accidents. Does that mean that God lined up that series of unfortunate accidents for you? Or does it mean that that's just your own fault? Only when good things happen is there evidence of God, but when bad things happen, it's clearly because you're a horrible person and you deserve it. I mean, I can't with it. I can't. Okay. So here she says the expression God helps those who help themselves. That means I did it myself, but God gets the credit. God is a male manager. So I've had a realization / thought. You're not supposed to bring anyone on the artist state because you're supposed to go by yourself, because it's important to spend time alone, because it's important to have your own opinions and develop your own self and know that you're alone, right? And not be influenced by others. But if you have to believe that there is a God or a higher power who cares about, whether you cough or you sneeze or you sniff or you're sad or you're happy, isn't that God always with you? So then you're never really alone, because it is always there. So it's going with you on your artist state, and it's with you when you're doing your morning pages, and it's with you when you're, in the shower. Interesting. So I was listening to a podcast that I listen to all the time that is interviews with authors about books they've written. Pardon me. Going on week 74 of sick. And the author's Catherine May, and the book is called Enchantment. And in the interview, she's talking about sort of finding God and for her what that means. And there was a line that really stuck with me that I wanted to share with you. So it's this idea that she's talking for her about spirituality and how it's not about like asking God for things, but understanding that like nobody's going to give you an answer, that you have to participate in that stuff. And it just made me think a lot about the artist's way and how the point of the book, I think, I understand we're only in week 3, but the point of the book that I think is at least a point that I agree with very much so, is the idea that you have to take action. Your art life, your creative life is not going to happen to you. And it doesn't just happen for other people. And as much as people talk about luck, you have to have agency. You have to do something. And that the act of fulfilling this 12-week course, that's you taking an action. And by completing it, what you've done is you're committed enough to this path that it's indicative that you're going to do something, that you're willing to put in the time. And so perhaps completing this book is not the content of the book necessarily, but it is the level of commitment that you have to unlocking your creativity. So here's the thing about morning pages. There's no way for me to get them done in the morning. I get woken up by toddler alarm clock. We immediately go into like our day. There is no like half an hour to myself in the morning to sit and write in a notebook. So by the time I get around to thinking about the morning pages, it's later in the day, or there's a series of appointments or other things that have to get done. So in order for me to do the morning pages, I would have to get up on purpose like half an hour earlier. And I'll be frank, I'm not willing to make that commitment. So I either need to think about them as evening pages, maybe last thing of the day, like dumping out my thought. That's one of my only alone times, or something. But that's a huge part of why the morning pages don't work for me and can't be pushed into my routine. It's because I don't have mornings to myself. So this week for my artist date, I took the advice of someone who, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, last week suggested that the artist date could be taking an online class. So I watched some of the sketchbook revival classes, and I picked one that was all about doing kind of like a blob and then drawing on top of it. So I used some watercolor, and this is what I did. I didn't 100% do the rules because I ended up adding, I used 2 pencils. I used a black and a white. These are China markers or grease pencils to do this little portrait here with her arm over her head. But this was super fun and I really enjoyed it. So I will say that at first it felt like a chore, right? To have to do this artist date. It was like another to do on my list. But now that I've done it, it took such little time to watch this, well, it's a 20-minute video, but I watched it on 2 times speed and I fast forward through part of it. But anyway, then I made the art, which again took like maybe 10, 15 minutes. And it felt great. It felt nice to just do something without any pressure, and without any like expectations, and to sort of be that cup that gets filled, which I think again is the point of the artist date, right? Is that you're supposed to fill yourself with something. And so I did. I'm full. So I have been down an internet rabbit hole. It started on Reddit and now I swear to you, I've been all over. So it turns out that morning pages are actually an idea from a writer named Dorothea Brandt in the 1930s. And I think I just want to get this right because, of course, it's the internet. I had to check like back and forth 11,000 times. But she had the idea to basically, she wrote a book called Becoming a Writer, which you can find. It's in the public domain now since it was written in 1934. And one of the advices is this kind of free writing. And she tells you to write about dreams, write about whatever. But the idea was that you were a writer, and so you needed to write. And that's really where the morning pages came from. She talks about how it has to be first thing in the morning and all this other kind of stuff. But anyway, so then I started to think about this, and it makes a lot more sense to me that writers have to write, right? You practice doing it so that you're now can look and say like, hey, I wrote for, an hour today. I wrote for half an hour today. I wrote. It doesn't need to be great content, but you just are in the practice of writing. So as a visual artist, I really believe that morning pages should be making art, that they should be making art, that the act of making art makes you make more art. I don't believe the act of writing makes you pick up a paintbrush better. I just don't. It doesn't work for me. I cannot write in order to make me want to paint, but I can make an ugly, piece of tissue paper with speckles on it and a piece of tape. I can make a, piece of deli paper and it can make me want to do something more. I can clean off my paintbrush like you see behind me and it can make me want to make art, but I can't just sort of like write my laundry list and be like, oh yeah, and I'm in the mood to make art. My brain doesn't work that way. So I'm slowly converting my morning pages over into something else. The other problem being that I already expressed, I can't do them in the morning. So there's a section this week on dealing with criticism. And I like it, although I think it could be called more like learning how not to be defensive. And so I think I need to do that a little bit with this book. I don't know. I'm really wishy-washy. It's like I want the book to work, but I'm mad at the book. But I want the book to work, but I'm mad at the book. I'm also usually like a pretty good girl. Like I do things by the rules. I was always an A student, like all that stuff. But I'm really mad at the book. So let's check in from a very messy, disastrous space. I got the book. I've got the questions. How many pages this week did you do your morning pages? How was the experience for you? If you skipped a day, why did you skip it? I maybe did 3 days. It would probably be easier to ask why I did them. My son has strep. He's been home from preschool. Did not do them a single day that he was home. Did not do them on the weekend when obviously he's home. I can only do morning pages when he is at preschool. That's the only way I have a morning to myself in any way, shape, or form. Did you do your artist date this week? What did you do and how did it feel? So as you know, I did that online class. It was quick. It was painless. I liked it. I feel like I could probably push myself. I want to get out of the house to do something next week. I think I'm maybe going to go to a gallery. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? There's nothing I can think of. So no, I did not. I will also say that my experience of my life has not been synchronicity in the sense that Julia Cameron writes about it in this book, where like things magically happen. Like you wish that you could be on TV and suddenly a TV producer is like, do you know anybody who wants to be on TV? That's never happened for me. I feel like I'm a kind of kick open the door kind of girl. When I have wanted things to happen, I've had to make them happen. And maybe that means I'm going against what the universe wants for me, potentially, perhaps. But like, in college, so I have been very overweight my whole life, just the way that I am. And I wanted to be an actor for a long time. And in college, I kept trying to get cast in shows and I had a lot of trouble with it. And so it was part of the reason I became a director. And I couldn't get anybody to let me direct a show. So I started my own Shakespeare festival, a Shakespeare festival that still exists at the college I went to, to this day. And the same thing is true, later in life. I couldn't get anybody to hire me for, X, Y, or Z. So I did my own thing. I couldn't get anybody to, listen to me about this. So I did X, Y. I mean, I think that I have always been I'm not waiting for synchronicity. I'm not waiting for something magically to happen where someone can give me a hand up. I'm going to kick it open and I'm going to make it happen. And maybe that's why I don't like self-help books. Although that's funny because I should like them a lot because I feel like I've been a self-helper my whole life, like help myself to things. I don't know. Okay, and then the last question is, were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. I would say every time I got mad at this book, I thought to myself, I just want to get 1% better. What can I take away from what is being said here that can make me 1% better? I don't need to believe I'm in recovery. I don't need to believe in God. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I just need to take with one hand or two hands or all hands something that can make me 1% better.
Okay, so there's my diatribe for the week. There are so many good comments that I can't wait to discuss and share from you guys. And I have to say, sort of like as a side note, I thought when I started this journey of the 12 weeks that it would kind of be a happy la experience for all of us. And there would be tons of like, whatever. And it's gone a lot deeper than I thought it would. And that's been very interesting. So Sherry just left a comment about logic brain. And I think we talk about right brain, left brain all the time. And I think one of the things I do think about the morning pages is I've begun to think of them as I'm segueing them into something more visual, that it's meant to be like a meditation, right? It's meant to be just to get you in a new space. It's like clearing your palate. And I've read a lot of stuff about like why it has to be in the morning, like all over the internet, people talking about why you have to do it in the morning. And it's this idea that like by the middle of the day, your brain is in a different place than it is in the morning. And there's something fresh about it and da-da-da-da-da. And so I was thinking, I know this sounds stupid, but what is morning? Is morning when you wake up? Is morning when you begin your work day? Is morning when what is that? Is it when you settle down to do your work? I think. I don't know. I mean, I feel like maybe it's an appetizer to the day. And so they're trying to do like a palate cleanser. I don't know. It's a very unformed thought. Carol makes a very good suggestion. She says, I just plow all through the God, etc., as it doesn't apply to me. This is something I have trouble with, Carol, and I need to get better at it. My mom has yelled at me several times and said, stop focusing so much on that. I guess it just wrangles at me because because I guess I feel like it's such an integral part of her experience. And I want to have like a great artist way experience. And so, but I find it to be such a block. So I'm struggling. And you're right. You're right, Carol. You're right. 100% right. I need to get over it and just plow through. Absolutely. Sherry is talking about that you have to act. Paula also is saying personal responsibility. Absolutely. Sherry does say that she does hers at night. And I'd be interested to hear, Sherry, if you feel like there's any difference doing them at night than doing them in the morning. Donna says that she doesn't think it matters when you do the morning pages or actually what you do. It's that you do it. I think that's fair because I think it's like, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? when you exercise or what you do for exercise, right? It's all still exercise, unless you're actually trying to become a bodybuilder or something, right? Where you might need to get specific. As a fairly intelligent human, I don't feel the need to stand in line because the author tells me. Fair enough. I'm a people-pleasing good girl, and so sometimes I do feel the need to do it. And Treehouse Fiber Art says, can I call this my artist state? And I say absolutely. Last week, somebody made the brilliant suggestion that you can take a class to be an artist state. And I think again, like getting back to like, what's the point of the artist state? And I think for me, what I'm starting to figure out is that the artist state is about prioritizing your creativity. And if showing up here today to have this conversation is a way of you prioritizing your creativity, I think that counts as an artist state. And I think it's also about like just nourishing your creative self, which is to say, sometimes nourishing your creative self is not actually making art. It's receiving stimulus of some kind. And that could be from nature. I have a window here, which is why I'm looking there, but it could be from nature as a walk. It could be from reading a book. It could be a lot of things. I think it's again about like nourishing yourself. And Carol says that she agrees about the morning pages. We make it what helps us. Absolutely. And Paul is another fan of making art morning pages. Kathleen has a very specific suggestion, which is great. She says, how about trying half an hour of non-directed art play instead of morning pages, like morning pages for artists? Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And Paula said something that really resonated with me. She says here, our preconceptions or underlying ideologies can get in our way like a block. So true. And this is so true about so many things. One of the first things that I say to my students all the time is I say, don't picture what the finished painting is supposed to look like. Because the second you do, it becomes a block because you can't quite get there, right? So, I mean, this is another like preconception or underlining ideology that, or like a belief you have about yourself, who you are. And it can be really hard to get past. And I suppose that's why it's good to stick with something, because 12 weeks is a long time, right? And so you naturally are going to go through a whole thing. In order to stick with it for 12 weeks, you kind of got to get past yourself. So hoping to get past myself at some point. Donna makes a great point. She says sketchbooks have pages too, 100%. Paula, I think you're talking about synchronicity. You say, try just looking at what happens that you don't make happen, but is just simply given to you. That's called grace. Kathleen says, I totally get the theology problem. It's the theodicy problem. How can there be a good God when there is so much totally unmerited suffering, civilian casualties of war, for example? That's always been a really hard one for me. How can a child get cancer? There's just so many terrible things, right? Carol says 1% better. Yes, I like that idea. That's been a really helpful mantra, sort of dragging me through this. And sometimes I use that idea, like if I'm in a class that's really terrible, like if I'm physically in the class and I need to stay, it's like, okay, look for that thing that's going to, make me 1% better. Look for that thing that's going to make it all kind of worth it, Treehouse Fiber Art says, it occurred to me the other day that when this book was written, there was no keyboarding laptop, so people wrote a lot more. So maybe the act of writing 3 pages wasn't as big a deal to them. I think that's very possible. It is a 30-year-old book. And also the Dorothea, I'm forgetting her last name already, who came up with the morning writing in the 1930s. Her thing was that you write for 15 minutes. To me, there's an enormous difference between being forced to write 3 pages and being told sit down for 15 minutes to do something. So like if you tell me like, hey, let's go write for 15 minutes, make art for 15 minutes. There's not a lot that I feel like that's so manageable, very much deeper, hurts and makes uncomfortable times. Sherry, are you talking about doing your morning pages at night instead of during the morning? I'm just wondering because I'm not sure what the comments in response to. And Kathleen follows up saying, throughout history, there have been answers to theodicy, but no answer satisfies every person all the time. Free will, defense, etc. Too many of them blame people for every bad thing in some way. Treehouse Fiber Art says she loves the morning pages, only writes about 4 mornings a week and only 1 page. That's a great way of making it work for you. Absolutely. Adana says, not a morning person, so the thought of something I need to do in the morning is difficult. I don't think the time of day matters. Great. I think you should use all your knowledge and talent to write a true artist way book with art pages instead of morning pages. 100%, right? Ooh, Stephanie says, I sleep better when I do night pages. I do find, I don't know, does anybody else do this? Like, I lay in bed at night and my brain is like thinking about like what I need to do the next day, things that happened that day. And like sometimes to calm my brain down when I'm lying in bed, I think about an art project I want to make. And as I'm planning it out, I manage to kind of fall asleep because it helps to focus me. So I think, Stephanie, I might try doing night pages. Maybe I'll try like a week of doing night pages, a week of doing sort of an art warm up and kind of see, I don't know, see which sampler of that sort of makes it work for me. You know, Kathleen's got some more to share. The whole theodicy thing has been the question of my life. It's very human to want to blame the victim for bad things because as long as I don't do what the victim does, then I'm safe and the bad thing won't happen to me. That's so true. That's so true. Artist states can be triggering. Now that's an intense statement, Paula. I'd love to hear some expanded thoughts on artist states being triggering. That's really interesting. Sherry shares that her artist date this week was creating 18 cards. What kind of card? Like greeting cards, which is, I think that's awesome. And it probably feels incredibly satisfying. Veronica says, I've been watching you for years. I'm glad you're making great content. Thank you. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. Carol says, this class was a sketchbook revival videos are helping me prioritize creating art. Marissa talked about procrastination, that you need to prioritize and establish a consistent creative routine, 100%. And I think one of the things that works for many people about morning pages is that you have that routine, right? The first thing I do is I write. The first thing I do is I, sit down and do it. And then you sort of launch into everything else. And I know like in my own artistic practice, I have, I have a sketchbook practice. So like I do come in often and like do a quick warm up something right away. Although too often I go to the computer first and I sit down and I do like email or blog post or something like that when really I should focus on that. So I once went to an art lecture and this woman, this was gotta be, God, it was right when I moved to Boston. So it must be like 6 years ago. And this woman said something, this artist that has stayed with me about her daily routine. She said every day, her Monday through Friday, her day was the same. In the morning, now it's just her and her husband and their dog. But in the morning, she would do any sort of business related stuff she needed to for her art business. Then she would go for an hour-long walk and eat lunch. And then she would just make art for the rest of her day. And that she found that she couldn't make art in the morning and she couldn't do the business in the afternoon. It just wasn't right. And in order to change her headspace from the business to the art, she had to do that sort of walk in the middle. And I've always remembered that because I've always thought, I wish that I could be that organized, have that much clarity of my routine of myself. I don't know. Maybe I just thrive on stress and I need to be in a constant state of panic. I don't know, but I've always thought that would be like a really ideal, great routine. Sherry says, how long does it really take to write 3 pages, especially if you don't have to think about it? This may humiliate me, but it takes me like 30 or 40 minutes to crank them out because I don't know. I can't do it. I'm also not used to, doing it. Debbie says, I just got here. Are the morning pages the same as a brain dump? Yes, I think they're very similar. Very, very similar. Carol says, yes, the brain goes on overdrive when trying to go to sleep. Yay, not alone. Awesome. Donna says, I've been listening to the same audiobook for years to quiet my brain. Yeah, for a while, whenever I would travel, I always listen to like a podcast or something, and it just like zones me out so I don't have to think about it. To me, brain dump should be at night to get all the thoughts out of your brain so you can sleep. I love it. And that also goes to, we're not all the same. I saw someone say like, when you go to a presentation and the assumption is that everybody wants a 6,000 square foot house or everybody wants a sports car. And the fact of the matter is not everybody does. There are plenty of people who would rather live in a cozier house. Do you know what I mean? There are plenty of people who don't want a sports car and like would actually not like having a sports car. But we make these assumptions, right, that everybody wants these things. And so the same thing is true. Like I wake up and I don't have a whole lot of like, bah, you know what I mean, necessarily. But I definitely go to sleep with it. So maybe night pages are a good choice. And Carol, it's so true. The computer email, etc., can really suck your time away. It just absolutely disappears. So that's the end of the comments. So let me just tell you, I've been working on this blog post because I think I mentioned at the beginning of this week's vlog that like I have a deep compulsion to understand the underpinnings of things. So I have been like thinking my brain off. And actually one of the things, a lot of my morning pages are about this book and are about my thoughts about this book and are almost like, as if I was going to write a paper on this book, just because again, like that's the way my brain works. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is I've been trying to get to again, like, what is the point of the morning pages? What is the point of the morning pages? And I do think it's meant to be like a meditation, get you in a new headspace, like clear your brain. And if that's true, then there are lots of ways that you can do that, right? And I think the second benefit, which we talked about a little bit today that I didn't really consider though, is getting you into like a good creative practice. Then what is the point of the artist states? Well, the point of the artist states is to prioritize yourself, to prioritize nourishing your creativity. And Sherry also mentions, if I think about the morning pages, that maybe it's just about consistency, which I think is true. I often say that just like showing up every day is the most important thing I've done for my artistic practice. You know, Art Journal Every Day was created. When did I start that? 2012? Maybe 2011, because what I wanted was to, maybe even earlier than that. Anyway, because what I wanted was to just have a consistent artistic practice, and showing up for 10 minutes every day in my art journal was that, you know? And then, so like, what is the point of us all meeting together? And I think what it is to have some camaraderie in the journey, to have some consistency, to have some accountability, someone who's going to be like, how did it go this week for you? Let me know how you're doing, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I think all the assignments in here are really for you to look at yourself, like really look at yourself and analyze, you know, what you're doing. Like, okay. So for example, for this week, question number 8 is the amount of money I spend on treating myself to entertainment each month is. And then, you know, question 11, I'm afraid that if I start dreaming, or 12, I secretly enjoy reading. I mean, I just think there are a lot of things that are forcing you to just think about these things that maybe you haven't consciously put to the front. Like, are you prioritizing yourself? Do you put your money where your mouth is? You know, all that kind of stuff. So let's see. Kathleen says, toddlerhood of my son almost killed me off because of lack of sleep, etc. Once my schedule's back under my own control, life got so much easier. Hang in there. Thank you. I'm definitely in the dark circles under the eyes period of life. And Paula says, just an FYI, if I remember, she has you read them later. Are we talking about the artist pages? There's a big emphasis on like putting them in a deep dark envelope and hiding them away, but maybe, or maybe you're talking about the homework assignments. Artist day purpose is also to reconnect you back to your artist child. 100%. 12 step, 12 weeks. Yeah, I do think so. A lot of people have said that this is, you know, she was going through AA and that there are a lot of similarities in terms of 12 step and all that kind of stuff in here. So potentially that is why there's the 12 weeks. Because each one is recovering something that you need to recover. And I mean, I agree in theory with everything. Yes, you should have a sense of power. Yes, you should have a sense of identity. Yes, you should have a sense of safety. Yes, you should have, you know, a sense of integrity. So I will continue on my artist way journey, trying to be in a good mood about everything, ignore all the God parts, try to make the morning pages, maybe into night pages, maybe into art pages, see which one works for me, continue going on my artist state and report back. And I hope that you will too. I do want to mention that I do have Sketchbook Revival, which a couple people have mentioned is totally free. And it's like more than 25 teachers, and I'm one of the teachers, and there's just lots of good creativity prompts for you. And then this is a great place to end. Sherry says, I'm not sure being happy with everything in the book is the point. And I couldn't agree more, Sherry. I think that the point is making a commitment to your creativity. The point is trying to work, making enough of a commitment that you're willing to go for 12 weeks focused on yourself, looking at yourself, and see, where you end up. I think that's the point. Sometimes it's like, it's not about like winning the race or enjoying the race. The point is just to finish the race, Okay. Thanks so much. And I hope you have a great week. I'm so relieved to not have a cough drop in my mouth at the moment. I think it has put me in a much better mood. And so I will see you next week. Bye.